On day one, as Ireland's batting was tripping all over itself, one man attacked like he thought he was still wearing greens in the World Cup. Lorcan hopped around the crease more than a, coked up kangaroo. He was coming down the wicket and trying to smash Broad back over his head. Missed the ball, of course, and at that point you think, how is this guy a specialist batter? It was needless and also not executed particularly well. He didn't get anywhere near the length, the bat turned in his hands, and even if he'd hit the ball off the middle of the bat, I'm not sure it would have been a particularly good shot. And I think it's this raw energy that meant I originally underrated him a little bit as a player. I think Tucker has hyperactive keeper disorder, on top of having a name that feels like he should be a hero in a young adult novel. But before modern cricket moved to specialist batters who could keep a little bit, we had specialist keepers who could bat a little bit. Guys like Jeffrey Dujon, Kieran Moray, Junior Murray, Moeen Khan, Farouk Engineer, Mark Boucher, Ian Healy, Ian Smith, and Rodney Marr. And most of them were either mouthy or high energy, but probably not good enough with the bat to ever be thought of as a specialist top six player regularly. But they all still made some runs. But there was always a flaw in their game that stopped them from just being a top 5 or top 6 player. And these players still exist in modern cricket. Niroshan Dickweller is a direct link to those kinds of players, and Sarfaraz Ahmed is perhaps one of those players in excelsis. In fact, Sarfaraz was good enough to get an average of 40 in Test cricket. But most of these kinds of players really top out around mid-30s averages, and most of them don't average much more than 25. But their innings have impact, and often they insert energy into lifeless situations. They're number 7s with attitude. And I mention all this because I thought this was Lorcan Tucker's best case scenario when he first appeared in international cricket. And part of the reason was that Ireland started by batting him at number 8 in his first game. Because so many keepers now start by batting up the order, when I see that someone has actually started down the list, I just assume that means they're a specialist wicketkeeper who can't do much with the bat at all. But that was early on, so I think we could ignore that a little bit because he was a kid and he hasn't played there much since. However, if you look at their big series against South Africa at home, he was batting at number 7 there as well, and there were certainly spots in the top order that he could have taken. I mean, he was batting behind Andy McBride. Andy McBride, everyone should bat behind Andy McBride, but he's certainly more of a specialist than Andy McBride is. And if you take a look at his batting by position in internationals, you can see that even as he has got good at batting, they're still moving him around quite a bit, and they're not quite sure where he should go. He was even at number 7 again recently, but he is also quite clearly a better batter now than he was even a couple of years ago. And the best way to tell the difference is you can look at his T20 career. You can see that in 2021, his game explodes. And part of that was because he started batting up the order at that point. And that was on a tour of the United States, which Ireland actually drew because the team was beset by COVID. And by the time they got to the West Indies just afterwards, a series they actually won, William Porterfield, who was pretty much retired and just helping out, ended up making a surprise comeback. So, of course, Lorcan Tucker was going to have to bat more up the order there. But it also wasn't like that was the year that Lorcan changed or anything, because while his T20 game got a lot better, that hasn't really shown in his ODI cricket, where he's still averaging 20 and has struggled pretty much every year. However, in tests, it's far more confusing because he's only played 4 so far, but in those he has 100 and a 50 and also a 30 and a couple of 40s. He's looked incredibly comfortable playing test cricket even against very good teams and away from home. In both of Ireland's innings here, he looked the most likely to score, well, until Mark Adair and Andy McBride came in. But for all the talk of whether his batting tops out as a plucky keeper or the top order player that Ireland is desperate for, I think he has the talent of the latter, but maybe the mindset of the former. He has real trouble staying in one spot as the bowler comes in. There was a Jack Leach over where, to start with, Tucker jumps towards square leg to give himself enough room to hammer the ball on the offside. A couple of balls later, he does the exact opposite, jumping outside off stump and then launching into an attempted sweep. A few balls later, he's backing away again, this time driving really hard off the inside part of his bat to mid-on. Remember, it's Jack Leach on day one. There really isn't a reason to be this proactive around the crease. And even when he sweeps, he very rarely stays in one spot beforehand. And Tucker does think of himself as a sweeper. And you look at his record and he's 100% right. Against spin and T20, his most used shot is the sweep. His third most used is reverse sweeping. He also lap and slog sweeps. This man brings a broom. But he also averages 12.6 when playing that shot. So it is very much either 6 or out. And you watch him in this test match, and again, he was all over that shot. For Tucker, England didn't bother putting someone out on the fence. Everyone was in the ring, and I thought at the time that should be an ideal situation for a very good sweeper. But I also wondered if England knew something I didn't. And then soon after that, he was out. And what happens in the second innings? Again, England keep all the fielders up in the ring, and once more, Tucker is out sweeping. When you just focus on his attacking shots in tests, he does sweep at about the same rate as he has in T20 cricket. So I looked up his average playing sweeps in tests, and again, it is really bad. But what is worse is that Tucker has been dismissed 5 times in test cricket already playing the sweep, from only 8 innings. And it is the only way he's been dismissed in tests by spinners so far. And so I thought, I'm going to have to look at all of his dismissals for Ireland, no matter what the format is. If we have a shot type for it against spin, I want to know about it. And in more than half of his international dismissals for Ireland against spin bowlers, he is out playing a sweep. That is something I'm not sure I've ever seen before. And it is worth looking at this as well. This is his second innings dismissal. My guess is he was going to play the paddle from up high to try and hit the ball very fine. But that's not what he ended up doing. He ended up playing a very normal sweep shot. But this is such a weird place to have your bat before sweeping. So he must have been thinking about a slightly different shot. And now if you have a look at the first innings, you can see that he starts outside leg and then he jumps all the way across to play a sweep. Lorcan has so much energy that it's almost like he can't sit still or even commit to one shot at a time. Even by modern cricket standards, Lorcan moves a massive amount. And while the sweep is the most obvious thing, you can also see this kind of energy when he is facing pace bowling because he's also still moving. Like when he skipped down the wicket and cloughed a short ball from Stuart Broad. The next delivery, he jumps right back onto his thumbs. And I mean all the way back, like he's batting in a T20 game at the death and he's trying to give himself more space. The following 2 balls, he moves back towards the stumps again, and then the last ball against Broad, he jumps down the wicket. He's just everywhere except where he should be. Lorcan Tucker has a lot of natural talent and a freakish amount of energy, but there's no doubt that he's loose. And because of that, at the moment, Ireland have a fun number 7, when what they pine for is a proper number 5. I still don't know what he will end up as, but watching him play, there's one thing I'm pretty sure, it's going to be a fun ride.